Hi, I'm Shannon from houseimprovements.com. I want to show you a floor heating system that you can put underneath tile that I've been using quite a bit. Right off the start, I want to let you know that we're not sponsored by this company, Schluter, but this is their system. They're the only ones, I believe, that have this exact system. So again, they didn't send us anything. We bought all this product. It's just a system I'm used to using and a system I want to show you how to use. So again, it's a cable system that we can embed under the floor tile, and it's actually kind of a unique system. So there's a few different parts to it. First part is this Ditra heat mat. So this is a decoupling membrane that gets put down on the floor, and as you can tell, we're not really ready for that stage, but we've got to talk about electrical, so we're just going through the whole product line right now. So I'll be putting plywood down on this existing floor, and then I'll be installing this mat, which you'll see here in a few minutes. And then this mat is actually what the cable itself clips into. So then I don't really want to unspool it, but the gray part of the cable is the heating wire here. And it simply just snaps right into these studs on the mat. You push it all in, get your layout all pushed into the floor, and then you're ready to tile right over it. Okay, so the heating cable is basically one long cable. You've got to order it specific for the size of floor area you're doing, and it's all pre-manufactured. You can't cut this cable, and I'm going to repeat that. You can't cut the cable. Okay, so you have to use the cable you have without modifying the length of it at all. So that's important in figuring out the right length that you need for your area. And actually, if you go on their website, there's some helpful tips on how to measure and figure out with the layout of your room what length of cable you need. So they make this cable in 120 volt and 240 volt systems. I'm going to be using 120 volt. And then they also have these thermostats. When you buy the kit, you basically buy a thermostat, you buy the wire length you need, and then you'll buy the Ditra, and you can buy it in mats or in a roll. So in the wire kit, you're going to have the wire, you're going to have instructions for installation, and you're going to have a thermostat lead, which gets embedded in the floor as well. So you're going to have one thermostat lead there, and actually when you get the thermostat itself, there's going to be another one in with this. And it's important that you install both. And you're only going to hook one up, but the other one's a backup. So if you ever have problems down the road with the one you're using, you've got another one in the floor, and you just have to hook the wiring up differently on the back in the wall here. These thermostats have a built-in GFCI, so they're all protected. So you can run on depending on your wattage of your cable, again, you're going to be a 15 or maybe even a 20 amp circuit. So that'll depend on what your wattage is here. So you have to figure that all out. This thermostat measures the actual temperature of the tile through those thermostat wires that I was talking about. So it doesn't measure the room temperature, the air temperature, it measures the floor temperature. Okay, and at the start of the video, basically what I want to explain is the basic wiring in the wall for the thermostat, because that's kind of your first step. So that's all got to get roughed in, obviously, before you drywall and everything. Okay, so to start out with, you're going to want a 4-inch square box. And then you're going to want a single mud ring that attaches to the front. And the reason for this is to give you lots of room in this box for wiring, because there's going to be a lot of wire up in there and you need a little bit of room. Plus the thermostat itself takes up a fair bit of room because it's fairly bulky on the back. So I'm going to mount in there like that. Okay, so that's my recommendation, is a 4x4 box with the mud ring. You're going to have plenty of room that way. Cable already has been run by an electrician up here, and so the circuit's all ready. Now the other thing that I want to do and it may not be necessary in your area or not, but what I like to do is I like to run a piece of conduit from the bottom of that box down to the floor. And the reason for that is this wall is going to all get covered up and not easily accessible when it comes time to actually put the wire in, because once we get this all in and we close the wall up with drywall, do all the mudding, taping, painting, blah blah blah, by the time we get to the floor, that wall's finished and we've got to feed the cold end of the wire up into here to hook into the thermostat and the electrical supply. So this just creates a nice chase in order to get those wires up there nice and easy. Some people might fish it down through the wall and just let it flop in there. It may or may not meet code for your area. I like this just because it simplifies it and makes it easier. So all I did is get some PVC conduit, and I put one fitting into the box right here and cut my piece off. I've got a partial bit of an elbow at the bottom there to make a bit of a turn. And what happens down here is, so this room is going to have plywood added to the floor. And so we need to make sure this is above there for sure. You want it coming out just right about at your subfloor level. Okay? And so on top here will be the Ditra mat, the tile, and everything, and your wire will just go up inside of there. You can use a fish tape easily down there, pull it up back through, or leave a string in there, whatever you want to do. Okay, so this is really easy to work with. Cut your pieces all to length. Glue them together. You need to use PVC cement to work with this product. I've already glued that bottom joint, but I'll glue this top one and get it all into place. Make a real mess. Slide it up in there, get it twisted and orientated the right way. And then I'm going to use a couple of clamps. Oops, that one's the wrong size. I put this little block of wood in here just because I knew that I was going to have to strap this to there. And I'll just zap a couple screws in there. To just hold it basically in place. And then this wire is kind of close here, but I'm hoping I can get kind of a strap on down here somewhere just to hold that end from flopping around, and it looks like that's going to work. So I just kind of got that on there. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned, I actually notched a little bit out of the corner here just so that this sits back nicely. We're still going to have 1/2 inch drywall on here, so it could be out just a little bit, but I like it flush with the framing if possible. Just keeps it tucked back out of the way. Just simply attach that there just to keep it from wiggling around. There. So we're good just like that. Okay, so that's kind of your first step well before you do your heated tile. If you weren't doing a full renovation like this, you could cut your existing drywall, get your box mounted in, and you still could get a pipe down in there if you wanted to, or you might just let your wires hang freestyle if they can. And then patch and mud around there if you have to work within an existing wall. So that's kind of the first steps of the Ditra heat system, and when we get further along in the renovation, I'm going to show you just in a minute how to do the rest. Okay, so we're back, and we're talking about installing a Ditra heat wire for heating a tile floor. So you just watched me show you what the rough-in is for the inside the wall, and now we're back later in the project. We've got drywall on the wall. We've got the actual Ditra heat membrane on the floor. We have a video for that, so you can go and see if you're using this system, you need to use this decoupling membrane as well. So again, just so everybody's clear, this product is made by Schluter. We aren't sponsored by them. They didn't send us any of this stuff. We've purchased it. I use it because I like it, and have been using it for a few years, so I know that it works. So as I said, this video is just about the wiring part, so we're just going to get right at it. So when you order your wiring, they've got a good calculator online, so just go right to their website, use their calculator, figure out what you need, and they'll send you out the length of cable that you need. Okay. The other thing you need to decide on is a thermostat, and I'd recommend you use their thermostats. They're made for this system. You know, everything's simple. This one's programmable, so you can have the heating turning up or down or off or on at different times of the day. They do have one that isn't programmable. That's a little less expensive, but anyways. So I would order the thermostat and the heating cable all in one shot, so you have everything. The other reason you should actually do that is because this system, and really any heating system, you really should use 2 temperature sensors in the floor, because if one messes up over a few years or stops working properly, at least you've got a backup, because there's no way to change that after without pulling up tiles, because those sensors are embedded under the tile. So another reason to buy the cable and the thermostat at the same time is they send one sensor in the with the thermostat and a spare one right here in with the cable. Okay, so you'll have both. You need both at the time that you're laying all this. So okay, so in your cable box, you're going to have your cable. You're gonna have your thermostat sensor, and you're gonna have all your literature that comes with this, warnings and installation book and all that kind of stuff. Okay, our system that we're using is 120 volts. They do have 240 volt systems, so depending on your needs, you know, will depend on what you use there. So let's get rid of this box. So we'll talk about the wire here to start with. So with the wire, there's some limitations on how close you can be to certain products. So for one thing, you don't want the cable to go underneath the cabinet, the hot side of the cable. So on this cable, they have the cold lead, which has this black sheathing on it. So the cold lead can be inside of a wall. It transitions here at this big junction from the cold lead to the hot lead, which is gray. This hot lead can't be in a wall, it can't be under cabinets. This is the piece that we're going to snap into the flooring here, which you'll see in a minute. But it does have dimensions that it needs to be away from walls, partitions, and fixed cabinets. You need to be 2 inches away from any of that at a minimum. Heat sources like baseboard heaters, fireplaces, 8 inches away. Plumbing drains and forced air heating ducts, 4 inches away. Then the center line of the toilet drain, you want to be about 7 inches away. So they do have some guidelines on staying away from certain products, and you should adhere to those as best as possible. But you definitely don't ever want to put this cable in the wall or under a cabinet or someplace where it's concealed. If you are someone who likes to have a mat or something in front of the sink or outside the tub, I wouldn't recommend putting this cable in that area, because it's just going to build up extra heat and it could damage the cable or maybe even the flooring. So a few of those things to think about as you're figuring out your layout and what to order. So you've got your cable here. And another thing, you don't ever want to cut this cable. The heating side of the cable, don't ever cut it. It can't be shortened. It's made from the factory to be like this. Everything's set up this way. It should never be altered on site as far as the length. So when you pull the little handbook out here, I guess it isn't in the handbook anymore. It's right here on a separate sheet. Let me get all this out of here. So there's a sheet here for warranty wise to fill out as far as the homeowner, who installed it, where you purchased it, all that kind of stuff. You need all this for the warranty, and it needs to be sent in. Yeah, so there's English and French on there if you're in Canada. And then this is the one I'm looking for. Then we have this heating cable test log. Now these are tests that you need to do on the cable at 3 different stages. You need to do it initially before you've even unspooled the cable or anything, like just basically out of the box. You need to do it after you've installed the cable on the floor. And then you need to do a third test, a final test, once you've got the grout all done and the flooring all finished. And basically it's just to make sure that you haven't damaged the cable and that everything has arrived in the condition that it should from start to finish. So they're pretty simple tests. You're going to need an ohm meter or a multimeter type setup like this, which are fairly inexpensive for doing most of the tests. So what we need to do is on this cable there's going to be a tag, and it's going to tell you, you don't really need to see because every cable is going to be different, but it's going to give you an ohms reading here. This is 53.33. Now that's what they said this cable was reading in ohms when it left the factory, and we need it to be within 10% of that through all 3 of our tests. So that's kind of the first test we're going to do. So we simply take our meter here and start out at a low setting. Generally 200 or in the hundreds is going to be fine. So we're going to set it in the ohms section on the meter, and I've set it at the 200 because I know that it should be around 50 some ohms, so 200 will be fine. I can set this down. I don't know if you can actually read the screen there, probably not. And then I'm going to just test with my 2 leads. Doesn't really matter which to which, but you want the hot and the neutral wire out of the cold side of the cable. So don't touch the bare leads with your fingers, it might throw off the test. And I'm testing there. I have got about 54.8. So it's actually on my tester reading a little bit higher than what they said it was going to be. So I mean, higher is always better. There's a bit of variance from tester to tester. So we're going to log that in here on the paper that they've supplied us. So what did I say, 54? And there's 3 columns. So there's before installation, after installation, and after tile installation. And really that should be after the grouting. So 54. I'm just going to write that on there so I have a record of it. Now the other thing I'm going to do is just check continuity from the ground wire, which is this kind of silver wire with the fitting on the end, to the other 2 to make sure that they're not making contact anywhere. So I've set it on continuity. Should be the little, kind of looks like a little sound wave thing, a dot with usually 3 or 4 semicircular lines after it. So we're going to set it to there. If this wire is bad on my tester, we're going to hear a sound. If it isn't, we shouldn't hear any sound. So we got no sound there. I've got just a 1 or a load indicating on the screen, and good there too. So if they were touching, most sensors would have that audible sound there. So I can just mark that in here with a check mark or whatever that it was good. That's the test number 2 on there. And now they do have another test that I don't have the tester for. That's, you need a, what is that? I think you need a mega, what was it, mega something. It's basically a tester like this, but it tests for breaks in the insulation. Now if you have one of those or can borrow one of those, or if you want to buy one, I've never bought one because the good ones are like $400 or $500, and this is really the only thing I'd ever use it for. So I've never done it. If you do have one and can test that, it does extend your warranty. The basic warranty is 10 years once you send all this in, and I'm not even sure what it extends the warranty to if you produce that results on that test. So that's the 3rd test. Now the next test you need to do is actually here on the sensors. I guess I gotta open up this. So this is on the thermostat sensors that would go in the floor. And again, we're just testing to be sure that there's no breaks in the wire or any wires touching each other or whatever. And this test here, because this is a sensor, like a temperature sensor, there's no one number that's going to be exactly what you need. It's actually going to depend on the room temperature of where you are as to what kind of number or reading you're going to get on here. And they actually have a chart here. Based on certain temperatures, you should get certain readings. And you're using the ohm setting again, and you're going to use you're probably going to use the highest number that you have on your ohm sensor. So on mine it'd be the 20M. Okay. So we're in Canada. I'm guessing I really should have put a thermometer in here. It should be around probably 23 degrees in here. So when I look at their chart, 25 degrees Celsius, I should get a ohm reading of about 10. And if it was 20 degrees, a little colder in here, I'd get 12. So I'm looking for something between 10 and 12 out of these two sensors to know that they're reading properly. And so I've got my sensor, or my ohm meter set there. I'm just touching those two wires. Now I don't want to lean on, this is the sensor part, I don't want to lean my hand on there because it'll be reading my body temperature. So, maybe I need it on a different, there we go. So I changed it to the 200K, the thousandths reading on there. I had it too high, it wouldn't register what I needed here. And I'm getting 10.9, so that's in between the 10 and 12 that I was looking for. So that one should be fine. So I know it's definitely not over 25 degrees in here. So it won't be under 10. This one I'm getting, oops, I might be leaning on that one I'm getting 11.3, so again I'm between the variances there that I should have, so both those will be good. Oh, and I need to write those down. So I'm just going to write sensor number 1, sensor number 2, and I had, what the heck was that, 10 point something? It's just hard to keep a constant pressure against there. 10.9, and this was 11 point something. 11.2. And I usually just put an indication. I know my room temperature will be somewhere between 20 and 25, so I just kind of make a mark there so it indicates that I know my temperature would be in between there, so, and my numbers are falling in between there, so we should be good. And that's all you need to test there. Okay, so we can get rid of this. And I'm going to just throw this thermostat back in this box, because we don't need that for a few minutes. Toss it in there. Just some garbage. We don't need our log test. We will need it, but we don't need it right now for a few minutes. Their instructions are really good, so if you want to read through that as well as watching this video, there's no harm in doing that for sure. Okay, we got rid of that main stuff. So we've got all that out of the way. What you want to do, the nice thing with this system is you can kind of snap it all in to the cable, or to the floor. So just try not to kink the wires or anything. Be a little bit gentle with them when you're dealing with them. I'm just going to get some off the spool here. So again, this black is the cold lead that goes up into the wall, up to the thermostat, which our thermostat's up here on the wall. They're going to be. So it's the gray cable that we're going to put into this mat, and it's a really good system. It just fits nicely in between those little studs there, and then you apply your mortar and tile right over it. So the nice thing about it is if you lay it all out and you get to the end and you have a problem, you can simply pull it out or pull it back to where you need to and start over. Just to save some time, I had already spooled this out here the other day and figured out my pattern. I had a good idea in my head what I wanted to do, and when I got to the end, that's what these black lines are here, because I actually mapped it out on the floor once I knew what I wanted to do, so that speeds it up now that I want to install it and I don't have to figure it out again. But I had originally put it all in to how I thought it was going to work out, and I ended up being a little too far from the tub with my last run. I was a little short. So I pulled it all out and decided, okay, well, I can shrink it away from the wall. I don't need the tile to be right warm right to the wall, and got myself some extra wire. So I relayed it all out here. I haven't run it in this design yet, but it should be fine. And I should get around by the toilet here and have maybe a foot or so extra, and we'll just weave it back into that area away from the toilet. So just kind of pre-plan it out. Like I said, you can snap it in. If it doesn't work out, you can always pull it out and try again, but have a bit of a plan in mind. So like I said, I've mapped it out with the black marker line that you can see on there. It's going to come out of the wall down here, and we've got to cut out a bit of the mat, the Ditra, and hot glue this connection into the floor here, and then my wire will simply start going. Okay, so that's the heating wire. The thermostat wires, we don't ever want them to cross the actual heating cable. So they need to come down from the box up there and out onto the floor without crossing the hot lead. And they need to be run up and placed in between two of the runs. Now these runs, as they coil around, never should be any closer of this heating cable than 3 studs apart. So you can see I've got 3 studs between. That's the recommended spacing. So no closer than that. Obviously the wire, when it's in there, the heat radiates out, a stud and a half or so each way of the wire. So, we're away from the vanity here, but we're still going to get heat up to a certain point there. Now, when I laid it out, right here where the sink's going to be, and you're normally going to be standing up closer, I actually got in a little closer here. I'm still the 2 inches away that they want from not being under the cabinet, under the kick, but I'm a little closer than I am over here, and that was just so I could get some extra wire to be long enough down there. Okay, so run your thermostats in between the heating cables, and then we're going to notch a little piece out and hot glue the sensor end into there. So that's one cable. I don't know if you can see that silver line down here. I think the cameraman said it's really hard to pick up compared to the black. My other silver one, again, doesn't cross the heating line. I'm going to come around over here, and I'm going to place it down over here. And they usually recommend that you want to get out into the floor a bit. Don't put it right over by the wall. Don't put it by another heat source, and don't put it somewhere. If your cat has a favorite place to lay in the corner of the room that you're doing or something, or your dog, don't place the sensor there, because the dog laying in that spot, they aren't going to know the difference, and the sensor can't tell the difference. The body heat from that animal is going to actually throw your heating system off. So I generally put it out in the middle of the room and get it a couple feet or 1.5 feet or so away from the wall or anything. So okay, so I pre-marked that all out, so in my mind this is quick and easy once we get going. Now, something I learned today, because I kind of went through the manual just to be sure I wasn't forgetting to tell you anything, and I came across something that I've never seen before, and I've installed probably more than a dozen of these systems over the last 3-4 years. and that was, you know how we showed you I have the conduit inside the wall here to run the cable up in? Well, now in the book they say that they don't want these wires running in that same conduit. They don't want it touching this cold side of the heating wire. So obviously we weren't set up for that in this setup. I actually dug out an old book. In that same step, it actually says to run them both, like run all that up there together. So they've changed something here in the last little while. The books aren't dated, so I'm not sure when they changed it. But this is a new, recently purchased, so this must be their newest recommendations. So that all being said, what I did is I pulled out the thermostat, because I had to figure out, okay, well, how can I do this? Because I can just dangle these down in the wall cavity. There's no problem with that, where the other one, most places want it in a conduit. So what I did is I pulled this off. What did I do with my screwdriver? So the thermostat just simply has one little screw here on the bottom that you loosen off to remove the faceplate from the piece that sits in the wall. So I just took this piece that fits into our box, and they've actually got these slots and a couple different holes along here, and they are actually outside of my electrical box that's in the wall. So I just made a little notch here in the drywall, still hidden behind this, so it's never going to be seen, and I can drop my fish tape down the wall, pull my wires back up through there, bring them in through the back side of one of these holes, because they hook up right here. So it'll just come in and hook up there. So this is something I've never had to worry about before, but apparently it is needed. So we want to make sure that our sensor wires are not in the same conduit as the hot wires. Okay, so let's do that right now. I just want to kind of pull my excess stuff just so it's up out of the way. So my cold lead, most times I can simply stick it in that conduit that I've got showing down here and push it up there. And I can usually push it all the way up. If I can't, I'll push my fish tape down, hook it to this, and pull it up. But generally, where's the pipe? Right there. Generally, this is pretty stiff because it's all connected together. And I can push that up there. Make sure you don't get any kinks in any of this. I think I'm up here. Let's see if I can get a hold of it. Yeah. So if you remember, we used a 4-inch box back there with a single gang mud plate on it, and that's because you are going to have a lot of stuff up in this box, and you need that little bit extra room. That's what's going on. So that we can, I never even shorten this up. It doesn't really say that you shouldn't, but I just don't want to mess with it. So I always coil this all up in there too, this cold lead. Okay, so I pulled that up there. We've got our little junction, factory junction down here. That's what we're going to embed in the floor right there. So lengthwise, we're sitting pretty good. Now these thermostat sensors. Just undo these little ties off them. And I'm going to push a fish tape down in the wall and hook these on and pull the ends up. And these are always very long, so you should have all kinds of length there to go anywhere you want to go. So I'm just going to use electrical fish tape. And once I get some out here, I'm just going to stick it down this hole that I cut in the drywall. And with any luck at all, it should pop out. I cut a little bigger hole down beside the pipe too. And with any luck at all, we should be able to get this where we want it. The trick may be just to find that hole. Just going to go down there and take a look, see if I can see it. Oh, there it is. There we go. There's my end right there. Okay. So I will just take some electrical tape, tape the ends of these sensors to that, and then pull back up through the wall. Just make sure, this is pretty light wire on these sensors, make sure you don't kink it or damage it. Yeah, it shouldn't take much to get these up there. It really doesn't matter which one is which up there. You're just going to keep one for basically a spare for down the road if you ever need it. So just got to hook one up and leave one in the box. Just taking some extra care to be sure these don't get too tangled up. Okay, there we've got our end showing. That one wants to keep getting in a bad spot there. I don't want to kink it. Okay, so I can get rid of this. Yeah, I thought I had enough of it sticking out there. That slid right down the wall again. Okay, we found it again. See if we have a little better luck this time. Make sure I pull a little more out this time, so hopefully don't lose it again. This would be much easier with two people. Somebody could keep track of these wires. Okay, we should be safe now. Okay, let's get on with this. So I've had my hot glue gun going here a bit. If you wonder why I'm sitting on this stuff is really hard to nail on for any amount of time, so I just brought a blanket. It's hard on your knees and your ankles the way I'm sitting. Okay, so these I just need to kind of keep out of the way for right now. Make sure that isn't going to go anywhere. So like I said, this, I might even say on here, yeah, must be installed under the floor covering. So you don't want this in the wall, you want this out in the floor. But I mean, it's too thick to sit on top like this. You never get your tile to sit nice. So just cut out a piece of the Ditra. Make sure you don't cut the wire. Peel up a piece of that. And actually that's even a little high with the mortar. So I'm gonna peel out some mortar. If you had a chisel or whatever, that would work fine. Seems exceptionally thick. I might even have to chisel out a little bit of plywood there. So I don't have a chisel with me, so I will go grab a chisel. Okay, so I had to take a wood chisel and just chisel out some of this wood subfloor down here. I don't know, that's generally not an issue, but maybe they've made this just a little bit thicker. But you definitely don't want the top of this sticking up above the studs here. So this is going to sit down in there nice. I want it positioned somewhere where I can get it immediately locked into the studs, so we should be good there. So I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue down there to hold it down. And I just use hot glue because it dries pretty quickly and I don't have to worry about this moving around. I'll just hold it there for a minute. And basically then you're ready to start cabling your wire out or whatever. And like I said, now that I've got it mapped out, it should go pretty good. So you can just stick it in those nubs or those studs or whatever. I don't know what the right terminology is. Studs probably. Kind of get it in there and just let it reel off the roll. Try not to kink it or overly bend it. It shouldn't bend any more than like around one stud like that, no sharper than that. Just so I don't forget, if you're doing a really large room, or maybe you wanted to go all the way to the other end and work your way back or something, they don't recommend having a straight run of this wire any more than 10 feet long. But all that's required, if you're going to be more than 10 feet, if the camera can look right down here, all they require you to do is this, and then continue on. I don't really know what that does, but that's what they recommend. So if you're going to be more than a 10-foot straight run without a curve, you want to put a little bend in it. We're just going to spool some out, and once I get going here, you can use your finger like I am, or if you're doing some longer stretches, if you just use a rubber grout float, you can kind of snap it right in, just sliding it along like that. If you're doing a lot of it, that kind of works pretty good. A little easier on the finger. I don't find it so bad on the finger when you're doing short runs, but some people like to use that float. Now you can see right here, I actually jumped over 4 studs, and that was only because, I don't know, I probably could have. No, see, it doesn't want to quite, because that's a seam in 2 pieces of my Ditra, and it doesn't want to really clip in there. So I just jumped over 4 studs. It's still not going to feel cold there, and it's in a place that it's not like you're standing there all the time or anything. So I'll just keep weaving it back and forth. If you have a second person, they can kind of be unspooling it as you need it. So in our room, this is where the door would be if the door is open. So I didn't feel it necessary to go right back against the wall here. This will heat back to about there, and I mean, when the door is open, nobody can step back there anyways, and when it's closed, there's no reason to be standing there in the bathroom behind the door. So I'm just going to go along, and I try to work in a manner that I'm not sitting on this wire, but if eventually at some point you're going to have to, and you're going to be walking on it, so just be careful that you're not pinching it under your shoes or whatever, or catching it with something that you're moving in the room. So here we are by a heat register, so I'm staying away from that heat register. 4 or 5 inches. The nice thing about this is you don't have to, some other systems you've got to attach some kind of little holders to the floor, get all the wire laying there, and then you've got to embed the wire in a self-leveling compound. You got to wait for that to dry, then you got to come back and install your tile, where this, you can literally do this all in the same day. Just put this down and start putting your tile down, and that's actually what we're doing today. So it's pretty quick. And those other ones with the, when you use the self-leveler, I have done a few of them, and what I find, unless you have those clips really often, the wire wants to float. As you pour the self-leveler, the wire's kind of coming up and it's not staying down, and you're just kind of pulling your hair out. This here, once you've snapped it in here, it's in there. So I'll just continue along here. We'll probably speed some of this up. Oh, I should mention, forgot about this till I got to it. With their system, you're going to come to a point where you're going to have a little tag like this, and they put that at about the middle of the length of cable. So as you're going, it gives you a bit of an idea. You can look back and go, okay, am I going to make it? Am I going to get where I want to go? Just gives you a bit of an idea where you're at with how much cable you've got left. Just pull that tag off after. If you want, you can put a little mark on that spot or something, just in case you have to pull the wire out and you want to have a bit of an idea where that was again. You don't want to leave it in there because it just ends up being a big loose spot that nothing's going to bond to. Okay, I should be done talking for a minute. Now, as I got down here, I had mentioned before how when I first laid it in here the other day, I was a row short, and I realized also, even if I got enough cable, it was going to end up where my last row was going over here, and if I had any excess, I had nowhere to go over here to get rid of it. So once I got down to this point, I'm going to weave back and forth this way, work my way over to this open area where the toilet will be. So any excess I have that I don't really need, I've got some free space there to kind of run it into. You can see I'm just maintaining my 3 stud space here now that I've changed directions. I'm staying a couple studs away from my tub. Must be getting down close to the end. Hopefully this works out. Like I said, I didn't actually put the cable in to try it. I figured I had retrieved enough extra cable here to get where I needed to go, plus a little bit, so I think I'll be all right. We will soon see. Okay, so that's the end of what I had traced out. My toilet, you're not going to see it, but my toilet flange is just back there. So my toilet's going to the base is going to kind of come out and sit here. So I think I think I'm just going to turn here and just kind of weave back into this area, and that's going to be wherever it ends up, it ends up. Okay, so once you get, so we want to be 7 inches? Yeah, 7 inches off that pipe. So we should be good. And I just, yeah, like I said, you're not going to see it, but I just kind of used up that last couple feet that I had, kind of ran back in there. And it's the right distance away from the toilet, so we're not going to damage it. And then I'm just going to go back and make sure that it all stayed embedded. Looks like it did. Everything's good there. So now our sensors. So here's one. So this cable doesn't snap in here. And we also need to put it in between the two wires, not just here because it's too close to this one. So we're going to cut a little notch here. Careful you don't slip and cut the heating cable, because that'll be bad news. That means you're going to buy a new one. Just going to cut out a little notch here. Get it out. Come on. Now I've got that fleece, that white fleece, remember? Well, I guess you didn't see the video. If you've watched the video on how to put this Ditra mat down, there's a white fleece on the back. Here's a piece of that product. There's a fleece on the back, so you just want to cut through that so you can glue right down to the mortar that you stuck that on with. So I'm going to put a bit of glue in there, hot glue. Without gluing my finger. Just kind of hold it in there for a second. And I'll use just a couple little dabs to hold this wire down. A couple spots too. I'm just about out of glue here. I'm not pushing hard because I don't want to poke this wire. Just using a dab, just enough to hold it there. Some of our excess here. If you've ever used hot glue, I've got these little spider webs of glue sticking all over my arms. Okay, so I just want to make my way back in here with this. Get a couple more dabs of glue, hopefully out of this stick. And we're going to do the same thing with the other one. And then we can test the wires again. Okay, so there's our entire bathroom setup with the cables, the heat sensors, all in place. And we've just got basically a couple little steps to do. Now, like I said, once we've installed that wire, we want to use our meter again to recheck our values here. Not sure if I can. So let's just see what we got here. So we're at 55, it's bouncing around a bit, 55.2 to 55.5 or so. and we had 54. I'm not sure how it got better, but we're still within our 10%, so 55.2 I'm going to write. And our other one is just our continuity on our, on here. Making sure we don't have, what did I do originally? Did I do here? If I did this, this isn't what you want to do. You want to do from each of these leads to the ground. If I did that the other way in the beginning of the video, I'm sorry, but sometimes when I'm talking, I'm getting no beeping, because I should get beeping if those are frayed or crossed. Yeah, I almost think I did. I think I actually tested those two instead of them against the ground. So just be sure you're doing the right thing there. So I'm going to give another check mark. That was all good. We'll double check our sensors. Where are they? I taped the sensors this time to that other cable so I don't drop them in there again, hopefully. I'm not standing on one, no. So that one's saying 10.8, and remember we wanted to be in that 10 to 12 range, so we're good with that one. Oops. And this one measured a little higher last time, so we'll see if it still does. See, the temperature of it probably changed, so yeah, 10.1. So that one must have been a little warmer. Maybe I was sitting close to it or whatever originally, but okay, so we should be all good on that. Okay, so it appears that we haven't damaged the cable badly enough to cause any issues that way. Gotta get rid of that stuff now. I never hook my thermostat up until I'm actually ready to turn the floor on, and you shouldn't turn the floor on until about 48 hours to 72 hours after the grouting's been done. Okay, so I'm not going to actually hook it all up today, but basically what you do, and I can't say if the non-programmable thermostat's the exact same or not, because I've never used one. I've always used this thermostat. So there's a little cover on the back, just comes off, and we'll take the face off again. Get those out of the way. So our two thermostat wires, one of them will get curled up and put in the box so that because we don't need it right now. The other one will come through one of your holes on the back plate here, and they'll just get hooked to, it says right here, in sensor, and it doesn't, they're reversible. You can put either wire on either side of that. Okay, so that's where they would go, tighten the little screw up, and that's where your sensor wire would be, the one you're using. Your ground cable, that's this one, gets hooked to the ground cable in here. Okay, and that's obviously hooked to the metal box as well. There's actually no spot to hook it to the thermostat. Okay, but make sure you do hook it to the ground of the system. Okay, so that's that. Then if you look here, we've got our load, which is these two here. It's marked load. That's for your black and white for the floor system, for the cold leads. Okay, so those go to there, and it doesn't matter which one is which. Okay, and then down here, or sorry, up here is your line connections, and that's your power. Your line is always the power supply. So that'd be your black and white wire in this case, because we've got a 120 volt system. You pull those out. So they've actually got it marked here. So this connection over here has line 2 with an N beside it, so that's your neutral, so your white wire would go on there. And this is your line 1 load, which will be your hot wire, which is black in our case. Okay, so stick your wires in there, tighten the studs up, and then just carefully get all these wires back in that box to the point that you can actually mount the, oops, it'll be this way. You can actually mount the thermostat plate. Then you can put the face on, okay? Like I said, I leave this off just so nobody can mess things up, and you know, I'm not here and they really want to feel how warm it gets. Well, it could really mess things up if they turn it on too soon. So I always leave this off and the breaker off. So okay, so that does it for, I know this is a pretty long video. I'm sure we're over an hour. We'll see, maybe editing can get it down a little bit, but anyways, it's just a lot of information, a lot of little things that you need to think about, and it is, most of this information is all in their handbook or online even, but I know it's just easier to kind of watch somebody go through it and do it sometimes and learn that way as opposed to reading it all. So that's how I install it, and right now this here is ready to start putting tiles on, and we'll have a video on that here coming out right away too. So thanks a lot for watching, and please click the thumbs up button if you like what you see here. And as always, you can go to the forum and post up your questions there. If you have just a general comment, you know, hey, I love your videos, whatever, something like that, throw it in the comments below the video. But if you have an actual question or a project going on that you need some help with, go to the forum, please. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and if you really want to do a little extra and help us creating more of these DIY videos, you can go to our Patreon campaign and maybe support us there a little bit. Appreciate your watching, and we'll see you in the next video.